Every time you scrape slimy spinach into the trash or find a carton of fuzzy berries you swear you just bought, you are literally throwing money in the garbage. The average family tosses hundreds of dollars of food a year, and most of it didn't have to die. Here's the thing the grocery store will never tell you. Produce is built to look perfect for the drive home, not to actually last once you get there. But with a few simple tricks, the same groceries that used to rot by Thursday will stay good for weeks. These are the 15 I actually use in my own kitchen, and we're starting with the ones that surprise people the most. Number 1 is going to change the way you store herbs forever. Fresh herbs might be the single worst offender in the entire fridge. You buy a big, beautiful bunch of cilantro, and 3 days later, it's a slimy green puddle in the bottom of the drawer. The fix is to treat them like what they basically are, a bunch of flowers. Trim the stem ends, stand them up in a jar with about an inch of water in the bottom, and pop a loose plastic bag over the top. Set that in the fridge, and your parsley, cilantro, and dill will stay perky for 2, sometimes 3 weeks. There's one exception, and it's a big one. Basil absolutely hates the cold. Treat basil the same way, jar of water and all, but leave it sitting out on the counter instead. Put basil in the fridge and it turns black and slimy by morning, and nobody wants that. Berries are next because they cost a small fortune and they spoil if you so much as look at them wrong. The mistake nearly everybody makes is rinsing them when they get home and then putting them away while they are still wet. That trapped moisture is exactly what mold is praying for. Here's what I do instead. The minute I walk in the door, I give them a quick bath in 1 part plain white vinegar to 3 parts water. Swish them around, drain them well, and then, this part really matters, dry them completely before they go in the fridge. That little vinegar dip kills off the invisible mold spores already sitting on the skins, and dry berries simply don't grow fuzz. Strawberries that used to quit on you in 3 days will go a week and a half, and you won't taste 1 bit of vinegar. Now, for a myth that's quietly rotting your vegetables as we speak. Onions and potatoes do not belong in the same bin, no matter how charming that little basket looks on the counter. The 2 of them are actually enemies. Potatoes give off moisture and gases that tell onions it's time to sprout and go soft, and the onions cheerfully return the favor. Keep them in separate spots, both somewhere cool, dark, and dry, and they'll each last for months instead of a couple of weeks. And whatever you do, keep your potatoes out of the refrigerator. The cold turns their starch into sugar, which leaves them oddly sweet and gritty and makes them brown up strangely in the pan. A paper bag in a dark cupboard is all a potato has ever asked for. Mushrooms are one of those things that seem to rot and fast forward, and it's almost always the fault of the package they came in. That plastic clamshell traps moisture right up against them, and trapped moisture turns mushrooms into slimy little sponges. The trick here could not be easier. Pull them out of the plastic and store them in a plain paper bag instead. The paper lets them breathe and wicks the dampness away, and they'll stay firm 2 or 3 times longer. Same rule as the berries, by the way. Don't wash them until the very moment you're ready to cook. A wet mushroom is a doomed mushroom. A quick brush or a dry wipe is all they need before they hit the pan. This next one comes straight out of the old days, and it still works like pure magic. If you grow root vegetables or you score a big cheap sack of them, you do not need a fancy root cellar to keep them all winter long. You need a bucket and some sand. Layer your carrots, beets, or turnips in a box of just barely damp sand, making sure they aren't touching each other, and tuck it somewhere cold like a garage or an unheated basement. Buried like that, they'll stay firm and sweet for months on end. I'll be honest, I thought these health rings were a scam. I bought one half expecting to send it back. 3 months later, it hasn't left my finger. And it does way more than I expected. Sleep, heart rate, activity, recovery, my cycle, and stress, all from one little ring. The thing that helped me most? I realized my afternoon coffee was quietly wrecking my sleep. One small change, cutting it off after lunch, and within a week I was sleeping like a rock. Now here's why I'm telling you this. Right now, the ring's 63% off. Just $60 if you grab it through the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. There's a 90-day money-back guarantee if it's not for you. But I'm keeping mine. And here's a quick tip that helps no matter how you store them. Chop those leafy green tops off the second you bring carrots home. Those tops keep right on drinking moisture out of the root. And they'll turn your carrots into sad little rubber sticks by the weekend. If you keep your own chickens, this one is going to save you a heap of fridge space and a little money too. A fresh laid egg comes coated in a natural, invisible seal called the bloom, and as long as you don't wash it off, that egg is perfectly content sitting on the counter for a couple of weeks with no refrigeration at all. That's exactly why farm folks have kept a bowl of eggs by the stove for centuries. Not sure if one's still good? Drop it in a glass of water. A fresh egg sinks and lies flat on its side, an older one stands up on end, and a full-on floater goes straight in the trash. And if you ever find yourself drowning in eggs come spring, look up water glassing. Submerged in a simple lime solution, clean, unwashed eggs will keep for a year or more. Here's one that even good cooks get wrong every single day: wrapping cheese in plastic. Cheese is a living thing in its own way, and it needs to breathe. Seal it up airtight in plastic wrap and you trap moisture against it, which grows mold faster and leaves it tasting like sad, damp plastic. Instead, wrap your cheese in a sheet of parchment or wax paper, then set that loosely inside a baggie or container in the fridge. The paper lets it breathe while still holding just enough moisture that it doesn't dry into a hockey puck. A good wedge of hard cheese wrapped this way stays delicious for weeks, and you waste a whole lot less of the pricey stuff. Before you throw out that bag of limp, sorry-looking greens, hear me out, because it is very probably not dead. It's just thirsty. Wilted lettuce, floppy celery, bendy carrots, 9 times out of 10 that's nothing but lost water, not actual rot. Drop them in a big bowl of ice-cold water for half an hour and watch them drink it right back up and turn crisp again. Very nearly good as new. And while we're talking celery, here's a free bonus. Stop storing it in that plastic bag it came home in. Wrap your celery in plain aluminum foil instead. The foil lets the ripening gases escape rather than trapping them, and a foil-wrapped bunch will stay snappy for weeks, long after the bagged kind would have gone soft and bitter on you. Let's clear up the great tomato mistake because almost every single person makes it. Never, ever put a fresh tomato in the refrigerator. The cold breaks down the soft flesh inside and flattens the flavor right out, which is how you end up with those mealy, watery cardboard tomatoes that taste like nothing. A tomato wants to live on the counter at room temperature, and here's the little upgrade most folks miss. Set it stem side down. That tiny scar where the stem used to be is the easiest place for air to sneak in and moisture to leak out, so turning the tomato face down keeps it firm and juicy for days longer. And if they start ripening faster than you can eat them, that isn't a problem. That's the universe telling you to make salsa tonight. Number 10 is less of a trick and more of a secret weapon, once you actually understand it. Certain fruits, apples and bananas in particular, give off an invisible gas called ethylene as they ripen, and that gas makes everything sitting near them ripen faster too. You can play this both directions. Got a rock-hard avocado you need ripe by tomorrow? Tuck it into a paper bag with an apple, and the gas will soften it up overnight. But then flip it around for storage. Keep those apples and bananas well away from your leafy greens, your broccoli, and your herbs, because that very same gas will rot all of them ahead of schedule. One bad apple really does spoil the bunch. Turns out that's not just an old saying, it's chemistry you can put to work in your own kitchen. If you've got a garden, or you just stumbled onto a great deal on a flat of green beans, freezing the extra is a smart move. But there's a step almost everybody skips, and it's the whole difference between good and mush. Blanching. Before you freeze most vegetables, you give them a quick dip in boiling water, just a couple of minutes, then plunge them straight into ice water to stop the cooking cold. That fast little shock switches off the enzymes that would otherwise keep right on aging the vegetable inside your freezer, turning it mushy, faded, and strange tasting. Blanch them first, and your beans, broccoli, and corn will come out of the freezer months later still bright, still firm, and still tasting like summer instead of the inside of a freezer. Here's another fridge myth that needs busting. And this one gets people every time. The refrigerator is the worst possible place to keep a loaf of bread. It feels like it ought to help, but the cold actually makes bread go stale faster than just leaving it on the counter, drying it out, and turning it tough in record time. So keep the loaf you're working through right now in a bread box or a bag at room temperature. And here's the real move. Freeze whatever you won't get through in the next few days right away while it's still fresh. Frozen bread keeps for months, and a few seconds in the toaster brings a slice back like the morning you bought it. Counter or freezer, never the fridge. Take a good look at those drawers down at the bottom of your fridge because most people have no idea they have an actual job to do. Those are your crisper drawers, and that little slider on the front genuinely controls the humidity inside them. Here's how to finally use them right. Set one drawer to high humidity, which closes the vent, and that's where your leafy greens, your herbs, and anything that wilts should live, sealed up in their own damp little paradise. Set the other one to low humidity, which opens the vent, and that's the home for your ethylene makers like apples and pears, so their gas can escape instead of building up. Sorting your produce into the right drawer instead of just cramming it all into one is a completely free upgrade that buys you days, sometimes a whole week, of extra freshness. Let's swing back to onions and garlic for a moment, because the way you store them makes an enormous difference. Both of these want three simple things: cool, dark, and breezy. Their great enemy is trapped, stagnant moisture, which is exactly why a sealed plastic bag turns a perfectly good onion into a mushy disappointment. The old farm trick is to keep them in something with plenty of airflow, like a mesh bag, a wire basket, or the classic, an old, clean pair of pantyhose with a knot tied between each onion. Hang that up in a cool pantry and your onions will keep for months, and you just snip one off the bottom whenever you need it. Garlic loves those identical conditions, so go ahead and give the two of them a cool, airy corner to share. And we'll finish with the simplest one in the whole bunch. The one that ought to be a law, the humble paper towel. Toss one dry paper towel into the container with your salad greens, your berries, your fresh herbs, anything prone to going slimy. It quietly soaks up the extra moisture that would otherwise drown your food, and it's the cheapest few cents upgrade on this entire list. And while you're in there, fight the urge to pack your fridge wall to wall. Cold air needs room to move around, and a stuffed fridge has dead zones where nothing actually stays cold. Give your food a little breathing room and let the air do its job. None of these tricks cost much on their own, but stacked together, they'll easily cut your produce waste in half. Now go rescue those herbs.